Declining city centres, are they a bigger challenge to our industry than inflation? Today, we're going to be discussing this on Shop Talk Live with one of Ireland's most innovative convenience retailers, Thomas Ennis. Thomas, perhaps you could join us.
Hi, guys. Hi, Dan. Hi, Nick.
How are you doing, Thomas?
Good.
Well, Thomas, you're always a man with ideas, and we're going to be talking about one you've had recently, which has been getting a lot of attention. How do you always come up with new stuff?
Oh, God. I suppose when you're just around, Dan, you're on the shop floor, you kind of walk around the city centre, you walk around your environment, you touch and feel and breathe the space you're in. And sometimes things, light bulb moments happen. And sometimes it's, you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But also, talk to yourself, Dan, talk to other retailers around globally, actually, because retail is quite small. You're reading some of the stuff you guys put out, and you might see an idea in something that a retailer at the other end of the world is doing, and then you just kind of say, well, we could do that here, So you get it from all. It's like, I'd like to say I come up with brainwaves, but I pull everything together and watch and listen to people that I respect, and sometimes you get a nugget, which I feel this is, and sometimes you get it wrong. So I think we've talked before about Irish retailers. We're very willing to take chances, and this was me taking a chance, and I think it's going to work.
Well, let's talk about that nugget. I think it's definitely a nugget, and obviously a lot of interest in the story that we wrote about it. But before we talk about that, let's just. Obviously, you're a very well-known retailer in Ireland and globally, Thomas, but you know Dublin and Dublin city centre from a retail perspective inside out, don't you? And you've got a very good perspective on it. So just on this subject of some of the changes in city centres over the last few years, just tell us, if you like, what the changing experience has been from your perspective in Dublin city centre over the last few years.
Well, I'm actually working in the city centre since I was 15. I think, I started in a place called Moore Street in Dublin, real working class as a butcher. So I'm very much familiar with the city centre on both sides, the south side and the north side of the Liffey. And I'm a proud, very, very proud Dubliner. The big difference I feel in the city centre happened, would you believe, at COVID. And by talking to other retailers globally, even on some of the travels, everyone feels the same. That there was nobody around, and so offices closed down, businesses closed down during lockdowns at different times over the last number of years. And what I feel happened, an underbelly of crime, delinquents, gougers, whatever you want to call them, crept into the city because there was nobody forcing them out, and they kind of crept in, and they haven't gotten rid of them, and they're still there. And you could have an opinion on why they're still there. There's a homeless problem in around the city centre. You've seen yourself, Dan, I walked with you. Dublin has become the little bit of the shine that we had. It's just a little bit dirty at the moment. And I don't think it's any different to some of the other major cities, that when things closed down, they were kind of neglected, I feel. And I think it's councils and governments need to put the spotlight back onto all major cities globally and do the things that we were kind of famous for. I think that's what happened. That's my gut feel, because we were around all through COVID. We didn't close. And no. I think what happened, I think an underbelly got in, and I think they're just finding it hard to move them on.
And what's happened now? We were back in Dublin 3 weeks ago through a really successful NACS event, which and a lot of retailers came to see some of your stores, Thomas. One of the things that struck us, you're right, like many major cities around the world, Dublin still has its issues, but business was back, wasn't it? It was a lot of the stores that were there had reinvested, that were doing very well. So, things have improved a lot in Dublin city centre, haven't they? But Mondays and Fridays still quite quiet.
Yeah, well, we're very lucky where we're positioned in the city centre. We've kind of sandwiched between a couple of good hotels. So tourism is off the chart. It's the busiest I've seen in a long time for tourism, both from outside Ireland and from internal, from people around the country coming to Dublin for weekends and what have you. So yeah, tourism is big. We've had a great weather like everybody, so we get a benefit from that. The Monday and Fridays, 6 months ago, there was a drastic kind of difference on Monday trading and Friday training. Thursday became the new Friday. You know, everybody worked them core days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Over the last couple of months, Dan, I've noticed a difference that, you know, people seem to be around more Monday. If I was to pick a day that's probably quieter, it would probably be the Friday. You know, people are working Monday to Thursday. So you can see what you're listening and reading in news and from what other areas are doing. You can see that people are slowly but surely coming back to the office, you know, and we can see that in our figures. You know, bank holiday weekends are quiet anyway for us, so there's no big drastic change in that. So yeah, I can see them coming back down. I can see it slowly but surely coming back.
Well, that's more good news, isn't it? But anyway, I was at just to replay what happened 3 weeks ago. I was at the NACS event, and I came just before the conference started, had a chat with you, and you said, you know, you were telling me about your new idea. So I said, all right, I'm going to come and see it, Thomas. And I rang you the next day. You very kindly took me to the new store during a lunchtime at the NACS event, and there we are. At this stage, I didn't have any idea of what the concept was. So what was the concept? What was your idea? What was the nugget, Thomas?
Well, if you look, I suppose, as I said earlier on, I do walk around the areas and you look at different things. And what's become apparent is there's a lot of empty units, you know, a lot of closed units that have potential. And I said this last year, actually. I was talking at a thing, and I said, all these closed units, startups, indigenous suppliers, you know, anybody who's starting a business should be given these units for free, while the landlord is going through whatever process he's going through, whether he's either going to sell it or whether he's looking to re-let it, because these things take a while. And get life, like people attract people. Put some bloody life into it. Get somebody in there doing something, you know, wherever that is, whether it's a startup making clothes, making jewelry, put life into it. Put somebody who has a bit of passion about their business, and they will breathe life into the building. So I kind of had approached a few people about going into some of the units. Short-term leases, there's no guaranteed deals here. I mean, if in Johnson's Place in the pop-up, if the landlord comes to me and tells me that he has somebody there in 3 months, I'm gone. And I totally understand that. And that's kind of, I think that's where the flexibility on both sides has cut through a lot of the red tape, where we're all on the same page. Let me go in, let me see what it's like. If it works for you, great. Works for me, great. If it doesn't work, let's be grown-ups about it and just pull the plug and come out. So I think once you have that conversation with a couple of people, the next process of actually finding somewhere became the next issue. And we did, you know, so we looked at a few, but this one was definitely the...
Why was it a good location?
Oh, well, it's a nice part of the city. It's down beside Stephen's Green. You walk past the Gavy. It's kind of a little loop into George Street, South William Street. It's a nice part of the city. It's 8 minutes from where we are in Merrion Road. So it's important for us that if we're doing anything, that I learned in 2008 when I got a shop in a different county, that 2 hours in your car is non-productive. So we've kind of made a rule that it has to be within a certain distance. So that's one of the main reasons that's close to us. It's a nice location. We know the area, and we knew the people involved, the estate agents, Banning. They knew who we were, they knew what we were about, and it kind of made things that little bit easier.
And well, we wrote this article. Perhaps we could show everybody. A lot of people have read this article. I think it's our most read article this week, just explaining the idea behind it. I think this was a week into your build, and it's. I mean, you estimated a 2-week project, so that's empty store day one. It's just a shell, and I saw us. You know, I think 6 days in, so there was stuff inside to look at. And then you had this ready, you beat your own target, you had this ready in 13 days.
Yeah.
And you opened your store. So let's take a look at how it ended up 13 days later. And perhaps you can tell us, let's just walk through the store and just...
If you look at the outside there, that's a kind of a throwback to the retro look of Spar 60 years ago, 1963. If you look at the Spar sign, that's the sign from 1963. So it's a real retro, funky store. It's really, really good. And I have to give a lot of credit to Spar Ireland, Declan Ralph, Colin Donnelly, and the team in Spar. They actually said, let's do it. Let's be a little bit nuts. And let's go for it. If you look at the signs inside, every bit of equipment except the coffee equipment is all secondhand. It's all been in different stores around the Spar estate. So even the counters were kind of reconditioned from somewhere else. So it's really, really good. If you look at the Insomnia, we're the first one with oat milk from a machine, iced coffee. So we've kind of added new stuff to our own range. We'd never done that before. So it's really, really good. Look at the signage, it's very retro. The records, they were there for me because obviously everyone who knows me knows we're big Stones fans. So they were all put up for me. But it's all different. I mean, stuff like that, Dan, you wouldn't see in a corporate built store. So it's great to get that flexibility and have a bit of fun. As I said to you before, I really, really had fun doing this. It was a good bit of crack. Look at the floor. That's
I was going to ask you, Thomas, that 13 days is not a long time, you know, and the flooring, you know, how did you do that so quickly?
It's like Lego. It just clicks in. So when we come out, we just unclick it and take it away from us, take it away. The two spider fridges you see there, Dan, they're gone because what we had in them just didn't work. They weren't needed. So that's the beauty of what we did. We just unplugged it and wheeled them out and got rid of them because it didn't work. Whereas I know myself, when you're building stores, we have a big revamp coming up in another store in a couple of weeks. That all of this stuff, you know, when they're put in place, they tend to stay there. Whereas in this particular store, everything you see there can be unplugged and moved around. So it gives you great flexibility to kind of tinker with stuff, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's another important, you know, facet of the idea, isn't it? You know, not only is it very, very quick to put up, you're able to, you know, to do a deal that appeals to the landlords as well as yourself in unused space, and then you can be very flexible and watch what's working and quickly adapt.
Yeah, I walked it this morning with Sandra and Joanna, and we're adding to the range already. We've been caught out twice. We ran out of stuff that we didn't think we'd run out. As a retailer, that's a great complaint, to get caught out and to get it wrong, because the beauty of us is that we're very mobile. We can react very quickly, and we've fixed that already. So it really is, it's a great learning exercise for us. Like, you think with the experience that we have, we're in the group that we fairly rarely get it wrong, but we've got it wrong in a couple of categories here, which I like, because it just means that we just have to be sharper for the next one. So it's totally different, and it's working out really well week one. So very happy with it so far.
So I guess
that's the company. That's a BWG Spar Ireland concept, and that's kind of tea as a category is grown really, really strongly, and that's your herbal teas and something different. And what I like about that is it's not overly, there's no over brand of Spar Ireland in it. They've just let the product do all the work. And as I said, Orla Jordan and her team at BWG Ireland came up with that. It's a fantastic piece of kit, and it's a really good concept. And I think that's surprising us how well that's going.
Well, that's it. I mean, let's focus on that a bit, because I love that, Thomas. I mean, one of the things, I'm a big tea drinker, and as is, well, you know, half the planet. And it always struck me that tea was almost the poor relation of coffee in terms of how much attention retailers were giving it. But I think this looks terrific, and it's doing well for you, is it?
Yeah, it is actually, because you're right, Dan. Not everybody is a coffee drinker, and I suppose as retailers, we became snobs, Dan. We thought that everyone just drinks coffee, you know, and it's not. I have a coffee in the morning, then I'd have a couple of cups of tea in the afternoon, because but I won't sleep. But it's really surprising. To be fair to the lads, they did a lot of research into it. So there's a nice selection. I think there's 8 different teas there, and that surprised me, you know, how that's been received. So that's a good part of it. Good, nice piece of kit, nice branding, designed really well, sits in perfect what we're doing. Again, on wheels. If we need to unplug it and move it, we can.
And I guess this is one of the big differences, isn't it? Almost everything in the shop can be wheeled in and wheeled out depending on how it's doing.
Yeah, that's the trick, and that's the beauty of it, Dan. You know, over the years, was involved in a lot of developments and builds of shops from scratch, and everything was always built and in its place. And you know, sometimes it stayed there for eternity, and even though it didn't work, too much hassle to take the thing down. So typical retailers, we left it there. Whereas this particular site, with what we've put in here, we purposely, everything that we put in here can be moved. And that really is, from getting the keys to open it in less than 2 weeks, that's unheard of, and I have to be honest, all the credit for that, I'd like to think it was me. It wasn't. It was Spar Ireland and Colin Donnelly with Declan Ralph, who and all the people that be our team behind it. But it really was a joint effort. We couldn't have gave ourselves a 2-week window and to get it done, and we did. So it's really cool. I'm really, really happy with it.
And what do you think about your? Obviously, you will have talked to some of your customers, and your team will definitely talk to their customers. Were they aware that this was a different kind of store, or they just liked the fact they could buy the stuff they wanted where they, in a convenient location?
Yeah, we got a lot of press locally from some of the local radio stations and the local press, because it happened so quickly that people, 1 week you're walking past and there's an empty building, the next week you have a real retro, cool looking Spar. So it's that's the feedback that we're getting. We'd like to have stuck a deli into it, because people are asking, is there no deli? Because we've been famous for our delis, but we didn't. And the reason we didn't, Dan, is because that brings a whole different raft of requirements in relation to the HSE and food safety that we didn't want to go to, because the whole idea was this to be simple, get it in and get it out. And if you were to go down that road, fridges, backup fridges, hot holding units, it just adds a layer of cost that we didn't want and a layer of difficulty that we didn't need. So it's that would be the only bit of feedback that we're getting. Other than that, it's gone down really, really well with our consumers.
Well, I suppose, and it makes sense to stay true to it is a concept, this, isn't it, Thomas? Yeah. And it's a different concept to what you've done before. And why would you add a deli which actually changes that concept and stops it being a temporary thing and makes it more of a permanent investment? It makes sense not to do that, doesn't it?
Well, we've all made the mistakes over the years that we try to be everything to everybody, and we just can't do that. So you pick your core business of what you want to do. Even with our range, it's the top 10, top 12, top 15. We're not carrying the full range. And the beauty about this, Dan, that can change as we go on. Well, what was the top 10 last week mightn't be the top 10 this week. And that is the absolute beauty about it, that we can just continually change it, take stuff out, put stuff in. We've challenged our suppliers to come up with some new stuff, and we've challenged Spar Ireland to come up with some new stuff. Let's be different. Let's be wacky. Let's try stuff. That's the whole idea of a concept kind of store. Do different things. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't matter. You know yourself, it's no harm to fail and make mistakes and try things. So that's the whole idea of this. And we had said that at the beginning. We'll try anything, so it's so far it's been well received.
Good. And I suppose, if in, I guess, 6 months, the developer says, well, look, I've just, sorry about this, Thomas, I've signed a new tenant, like to get them in within a month or so. They're keen, they like the location. It's not going to be that hard at the moment in Dublin to find another opportunity, is it, for you?
No, this particular site, if we're coming out with that and there's no one else going into it, it's a redevelopment site. So it's going through the planning at the minute. So that was one of the big pluses for us. So the option for us is when they redevelop the site is to go back into it. So there's a couple of things that we'd like to put in place with any developers that we're talking to. If they are going to redevelop and put retail, that they give us an opportunity to bid for that part of the development. So for us to come out here and go elsewhere, it's very, very easy. We've been offered 2 sites already from another 2 developers that have seen what we've done. Same thing again, they're going through a planning, they're redeveloping the unit, and they're saying to take us in, the rent and the cost is very, very minimal. They just want to get life into the building. When I'm talking to people, that's the way we're explaining, people attract people. Put some life into it, put a bit of color into the development. It's not a big cost for us. It's not a big outlay. It's not a big development. So we can go in and come out just as quick. But it puts life into a street that's, as you've seen, I think we walked down from Marion Road, we counted 4 or 5 prominent empty units.
We did, yeah.
And that's the same in most cities, been to London's, the New York, Chicago's, and there is a lot of empty units just lying there. And, not saying it has to be a retailer, it can be anybody, but there should be opportunities given there for people to breathe a bit of life into the cities by doing something as simple and as, thinking outside the box, really,
Well, I guess this is where convenience retail is, really, isn't it, at the moment? There's a number of challenges, aren't there? But there's also quite a lot of big opportunities. But as ever, it takes a bit of creativity, doesn't it, to sort of to change your approach a little bit.
Yeah, it takes a lot, Dan, but I do talking to people about different things, as you know, and when the Knacks were here, we were talking. I think we were put in touch with a couple of Swedish retailers, and we were talking to them. And we saw that Dan Barker from Aramark went over and talked to them about how we take chances in the food industry, and they were a bit reluctant in their convenience stores. And I was saying to them, if you get all the people involved in it, like, so when we were doing this, it wasn't Thomas Ennis, it was Thomas Ennis, it was Sparrow and BWG. It was our suppliers, it was our Ritza. We got all the main people involved. And the conversation was that we'll all share the pain. So if there's pain, we'll share it. But if it's good, we'll share that as well. So if you get the key people involved in what you're doing and the project, and it's from the start that they're involved. I stood in that unit with Colin Donnelly when there was nobody in it. We actually looked at the unit 2 doors down, would you believe? And then it was a bit small, and we looked at this one then. So you need to get everybody involved from the start. And I think if that happens, it just makes the journey that little bit better. So that's how we did it. We got everybody involved from the get-go, and thankfully and luckily enough, that everybody was on board,
Well, look, Thomas, I really appreciate you explaining the concept, and you're always very hospitable and willing to share your ideas with the rest of the world. And, the rest of the world is watching. And I'd be really amazed if we don't see some more of these pop-up stores, and they'll be trying to beat 13 days, won't they? So thanks very much. Thanks very much for joining us, Thomas. And look, as ever, we look forward to your next big idea on this.
No problem, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.